Hello, sleuthers. Today is a very, very fun day. We are talking to the dynamic mother daughter duo of Jessica and Cynde Harmon, who co directed Tipline, and Jessica was the director for the Aurora Teagarden movies. This podcast was created by fans for fans and is not affiliated with or sponsored by Hallmark or the Hallmark channel. How are you guys today?
We're good. Thanks for having us. Apologies for the occasional baby cooing or crying sound. My baby is currently on my lap, so he's occasionally I might need to step away and I'll just mute myself and Mom, you can take it.
Okie dokie.
I'll just make sure I ask a Cynde question at that moment. Okay, well, we're going to start with you, Jessica. So you grew up essentially with the front row to the entertainment industry, and yet you still wanted to go into it. So just curious, like, at what point were you just growing up? Because I'm sure your parents were doing this, that, and the other, and just seeing all the craziness. What made you decide, hey, I want some of that too?
Very young, I think. I feel like from the film children that I've spoken to, it's kind of you either are obsessed, love it, or you want absolutely nothing to do with it. It seems like I feel like it's similar with friends of mine whose parents were in medicine. Either they're going to be in the same field, or they hate it and they want absolutely nothing to do with it. So for my brother and I both, I think it was such a big part of our childhood, going to set and visiting our parents and being around film people, filmmakers, and movies in general, and their love for film outside of just doing it as a job. They also loved watching film, loved watching television, and showed us a lot growing up. So I think it was just kind of I never know. I'm like, I don't know if I would have found my way to it if it hadn't been somewhat put upon me in my youth. I would like to think so, but for me, it was like I loved it so much at such a young age that there was never an idea to do anything else. There was never a period where I thought, no, I'm going to be a lawyer or this or that. Like there was never. It was always going to be film for me.
Or something crazy like an accountant? Could you imagine? Well, Cynde, then the flip side of that is you knew, obviously, because you and your husband were in the entertainment industry doing all of this stuff. How did you feel then when Jessica's like, hey, I want to follow in those footsteps? Because you knew the good, but you also knew the bad. And, here she was wanting to go do that.
Yeah, we were not that inclined to put them into the business at all. And they had to be 10 years old before they could actually come out on a set as someone being employed there. And it was kind
of
You
say that like that's like 25. It's like we waited till they were 10 years old.
I know. Well, we didn't want them like babies being, oh, look how much money we're making on this child. It was like, do you like this? Do you like to come out here and do this? That was fine. And if they complained, it was like, you don't get many strikes. It's like, if you don't want to go to an audition, you don't want to do this, you don't have to, because we have to be there with you. It's a lot of time and effort. And it's not for everyone. And if you can't take direction going out for acting, then you shouldn't be doing this at all. It's like either it's going to be fun or it's not. So stay out of it. So, Jessica always right from the beginning loved it, although her very first audition was really big. I mean,
okay, you have to say what it was.
Okay, it was for Great Expectations. And she was going out to play the possible 10-year-old version of Gwyneth Paltrow. And funnily enough, 2 weeks before, I'd said, Jessica at 10 looks just like Gwyneth Paltrow. Just happened to say that. That was when Gwyneth was with Brad Pitt, I think it was, and so on. Anyway, lo and behold, 2 weeks later, my agent, because I did have an acting agent back then, said, we're looking for a 10-year-old version. Do you think Jessica might be able to go out? They're just going, around the world looking for this. There were 3,000 little girls that went out for this audition. And I got a call about a week later saying, you've got to get on a plane. You've got to bring Jessica to New York. I said, I beg your pardon? I've got a 2-year-old, Richard is 22. It's like, no, I can't go to New York. I'm in Vancouver. No, the director wants to see Jessica. So her very, very first audition, we ended up having to fly to New York for Great Expectations, and they kept her there for a whole week. And it came down to two little girls, of which they contracted both. Jessica was supposed to be the love interest, and the little boy that they hired was shorter than Jessica. And the other little girl had hair that had never been cut down to her knees. So she was shorter than the love interest. And it just came down to that in the end. She got a job 2 weeks later on a film because casting director said, I've never even heard of your daughter. What do you mean? Well, no, she's not an actress. She's never been out. Well, we want to see her. And she booked that part. So anyway, there you have. And then
origin stories.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a couple little fun icebreaker type questions. We're going to start with you, Jessica. Your birthday, according to IMDb, is 12/27. So you're 2 days after Christmas.
That's right.
Good birthday, bad birthday.
Great birthday.
So you're still getting like attention and all that. It's not all like everyone's spent.
Everyone always, I have always said, I don't think that there's a problem with it. And then now I realize if it's about gifts, then yes, it's a problem, just because also people end up having to spend so much money on Christmas that they're like, it was such a, a year we're not doing Christmas, or we spent so much on Christmas presents that we're not doing birthday, like we can kind of do, but not my parents, but like friends and stuff. But that never mattered to me. For me, I'm not really a birthday person, so it's kind of easy to go, I don't really care.
Even as a kid?
But is what?
Even as a kid, you weren't like into the birthday?
I mean, maybe a bit. Like it was never, I have friends that are crazy about their birthdays, that demand like a whole week or a month, and it's just like everyone needs to participate. I really just don't have whatever that is. I don't really care. I mean, it's nice if people can come together, but the upside of my birthday is that generally people are kind of overdoing family things by then. They're tired of their family and they've had a day of rest after Christmas, and they kind of want to break. They want to get out. They want to go do something else. So anytime I've actually said, hey, does anyone want to go karaokeing or snow tubing or whatever, everybody turns up because they're trying to escape their family by then, and they actually have a break, and none of them are working because it's the 27th. So everyone's usually in town. Everyone's off, or they were off school at the time. I didn't have to go to school on my birthday. So yeah, from this perspective now, I'm like, it's actually a great birthday. I didn't like it when I was a kid. The only thing I didn't like about it was the fact that normally when it was someone's birthday at school, they got to have like a sign on their desk, and everyone brought them things to school, and it was you'd sing for them. So I never got the school birthday days, but what do you do?
Well, you hit on one of my little hot topics here. So karaoke, huh? What's your go-to karaoke song?
Funny thing is, I don't really have a go-to one. I've always said anything heart, I think, is great in karaoke. Also, Billy Idol is a great karaoke. Eyes Without a Face, I think, is a phenomenal karaoke song.
You're rolling.
What's yours?
Mine is Can't Help Falling in Love. And I have been twice thrown out of bars for I don't just stand on stage, put it that way. I get crowd participation going, and sometimes not quite welcome.
That's not what they're going for.
So, okay, Cynde, your name, obviously people can't see it, but it is spelled Cynde. Have you ever once in your life had it spelled right at like Starbucks or wherever you are?
Never.
Do you curse your parents for saying you had it so easy and yet you made it so hard?
It's funny. When I had it growing up originally, I didn't know anybody else didn't spell it that way. I just thought that's how Cynde was spelled till I got to school a little bit later, and then you start noticing other people's, and it was like, well, wait a minute, who's right here? But I could never order all the things on the back of packaging and bicycle little licenses and on pens and things. No one has CYNDE. So that was always a pain, was I wanted those little things. And it's like, no, if it doesn't have my spelling, it's not my name. But I don't get people pronouncing it correctly. So anyone who calls, or I've had not many awards, but a few awards where they always seem to see Clyde Harmon. It's like Clyde. Yeah, they see the Y and the D and the E and they just think Clyde. So then it's like, going up to get the, that's Cynde Harmon, you know, not Clyde. Or you'll hear, is the signed in? It's like, that's just Cynde. So no, never got it squared away. But later when computer came out and everybody could actually search on the computer and so on, I searched my name, Cynde Harmon, to see, like, you know, where am I going to pop up, if anywhere. And there was another Cynde Harmon who was basically my age with exactly the same spelling, if you can
No
believe it.
way.
And she had a child who was the same age as Jessica, but a teenage boy at that time. Like at that point, Jessica was about 16 or something. I was like, what? The same exact spelling, the same last name? That's just like too much. So anyway, don't know.
Yeah, that is crazy. So my name Rutan is a just shortened Ellis Island type name from some Russian, Eastern Russian type name. And there is another Eric Rutan who's over in like Finland or something like that. And I'm like, that's the only other Rutan. There's me, my brother, and then that's it. And then this other Eric Rutan, which is kind of weird. So I feel for you.
Yeah, strange.
Okay.
That's nice though. You're unique.
Yeah.
Almost.
And
We
but I
only
can
have
I
one
can
other
get
person,
I
yeah.
can get the little license plate at Disneyland though with Eric. So
For Eric,
I,
yeah, not me.
I don't know if you guys got it, but I sent you the picture of you guys all on the couch watching something wrapped in blankets, and yet Rhiannon Fish is also there with you guys. Do you know the picture? Do you know the picture I'm
No.
talking
Wait,
about?
when did you
Do
send
you
it?
you
I
emailed
sent
it?
it over to your Instagram. Look at your
Okay.
Instagram
Oh,
real
I'm
quick.
sorry, I'm never on any of
Oh,
those.
Yeah, I
there.
know.
Hold on.
That's why I ended up
Okay, hold
talking
on.
to Jessica all the
Oh, a
time.
couch full of
Yeah.
people love Jess is there too. That's so funny. Yeah, it's us in LA at my old house, Mom. It's
And
you and
so,
I think we're probably watching the British Bake Off show.
oh, quality. Do
Probably
you,
like
Right, there it is.
6 years
Where the
ago.
heck did that come from?
That's
That's
so
funny.
funny. I think
Couch
Richard
full of
must
people.
have posted that.
it was on your Harmon family Twitter.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So
That's so funny.
obviously my question is, what's Rhiannon doing with you guys in this blanket wrapped whatever
We
festivity
just have
that's
random
going on?
Hallmark people over occasionally for our viewing parties. No, Richard and Rhiannon and my brother Richard dated for a few years.
3 years, 4 years, yeah.
3 or 4 years, I think. Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
lovely.
Okay.
Lovely. Yeah,
Really.
we vacationed together. She was over Christmas a lot.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
And yet you don't cast her in your movies.
It's not up to me,
Oh,
unfortunately.
well, she's actually in Alan's movie. Yes,
She's in Dad.
one of the very first ones when she moved to Vancouver, because Richard was here. We said, you could do so great up here. And she did. She, was doing so well in all the Hallmark.
Yeah, she's doing great. I'd work with her any day.
Yeah,
But yeah,
but
that's the network's call, unfortunately.
Yes.
But she was in Baking Me Crazy, which is the first film she had here that was a Hallmark, and Alan cast her in that.
Oh, I love that one. What is the worst thing that Jessica did growing up that she should still be grounded for?
Ooh, it's probably a few
Well,
things.
I'll tell you. Yeah.
Now, you may
Throwing a
not know what
party.
it is, and Jessica may have a whole different answer, but
Oh,
no.
yeah, that one's
Yeah.
probably high up.
Throwing a Halloween party when we were Alan and I had to travel to New York to a really wonderful wedding with a film producer. And we told the kids, okay, just no parties while we're gone. No. So, of course, she threw a party, a Halloween party.
Those
And
are
we had a white marble table, our dining table. And poor Richard, he was probably 11, 12 at the time, because there's 6 years difference.
He was 13 because I was sorry, no, I was 21. So he was like 15. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were already moved out by then. That seems strange, but it seems to me they were a little bit younger. But she was told not to have a party. Great. Okay. So she has a party. It's a huge party. And she's got a whole big witch's brew that they put with dry ice. They got dry ice from special effects and so on. It was just massive. They had a huge pumpkin carving, whatever, out in the garage.
It was a really good party.
Everything everywhere, right? But they have this witch's brew going, marble table, and all the food's on there in this big colored whatever. And the dry ice, of course, is going cold, cold, cold. It's a marble table. So someone goes to lean on the table and and the whole thing. So all the food, all the colored punch with the dry ice and everything all over our wood floors cracked, like the whole table's in pieces and everyone's just whatever. You cannot get that sticky drink out of all the crevices of all the wide plank flooring. Like, she was so mortified with this whole thing that she actually ended up sick. So we were in New York, we called back to see how's everybody doing, kind of thing. She's sick as a dog because she was so stressed from like, how I'm going to be killed when my parents come home. Richard and his friends tried to clean up everything because Jessica literally had to probably go to bed or whatever. And they thought they cleaned up. Of course, I come home and what they think is cleaned up and what's cleaned up is not the same thing. What a mess. And we had to spend some time trying to find another marble table to fit in there and everything. But what could we do? She was sick as a dog now because she was so stressed out. So I had to nurse her back to health. And
I have to say though, Cynde, I think this is on you. Telling your kid you can't have a party when you go out of town is essentially wink, wink, have a party.
Yeah.
And it's Halloween.
Yeah.
I know it was bad.
Uh,
It was bad.
But this sounds like a John Hughes movie, basically.
It
So-
basically was, because it was also an amazing party. Like, I sent out formal invitations to this party. So it wasn't even
this
a
isn't
last
just
minute party.
this isn't right. No.
It was a very
is-
well planned, very well executed, other than that. And the thing with the dry ice is it actually ended up on the, we put it on the wooden table, which is fine with dry ice. Like, it wasn't on the thing. It was in a like styrofoam container that it comes in, but we had put it onto the marble table around 2 p.m. earlier that day. And I like went and put something else down, then went and picked it up and moved it. So it was on the table for maybe a minute or two and in its container. And then 8 hours later is when the whole thing snapped and cracked. Like, that's all it took, which was, it's a little fun fact about dry ice.
Here's the important question. What was your costume?
I was Hulk Hogan that year.
Sweet.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
great. Yeah.
Jess does great costumes always. She makes a lot of her own stuff. She was the big Kool-Aid thing. She
I was
made
the
this-
Kool-Aid guy.
Hey,
Yeah.
Kool-Aid.
That was a good
And
one.
then the one from what is it? Where you're dragging the chair and everything from that movie. Like
Oh, I was Steve Martin in The Jerk one year. Yeah.
she had the table and all that. She was
That's
chair
all.
dragging with her. She's always really
Okay.
good with the.
I have some respect for your Halloween game there.
Thanks. I'm big on Halloween.
Well, it's only about to get crazier because here's the question, and each of you can answer yourself. What is a better movie, Afghan Nights or Kukakabra versus the Alamo? And
She
for
won't even
everyone
get the
listening,
second one.
Afghan Nights, Cynde starred in, which has a walloping 2.9 rating on IMDb
That was
versus
Alan's first feature film he
Kukakambra,
directed.
which has Jessica with a big impressive 3.1
Very
on
nice.
IMDb.
Jessica, I don't think I've seen
I
that.
was gonna say, I'm like, she won't even know what that movie is. Terry Ingram directed that. I shot that. I was in one scene where I get killed by a chupacabra outside of my car, and we shot that the morning after Morgan's wedding, my best friend's wedding. So this was 12 years ago, and I was supposed to go with her. I did go with her and her husband on the first portion of their honeymoon. My boyfriend at the time and I were joining them on Pender Island for like 4 days. We rented this beautiful cabin. We were going along to help them pay for it, basically. I had to be in Squamish at 6 a.m. and my best friend had got married the night before. So I was quite hungover, being ripped apart in Squamish by a chupacabra. So I'm going to have to go with actually a better movie. Afghan Nights is actually a far stronger movie, but Chupacabra versus the
Despite
Element.
the 2.9.
What an idea. What an idea, Chupacabra. Yeah. Although I don't believe in IMDb ratings personally, because it's always just, no one goes on those things other than the people that really hate the movie. And oftentimes, like when I read it, it'll be for the most obscene reason. It'll be some crazy reason that they hate it, or they didn't like one element and they give it a 1. Like, how is that fair? Like, that that Super Cop are probably 3.1 is probably someone being nice by giving it a 3.1.
I was about to say, so what you're saying, Cooper Hop is supposed to be like an 8.9?
No, I don't think they missed the mark on that one. That was the one they got right.
Okay.
And I was just on location because Alan was directing Afghan Nights. It was his very first feature film. Wasn't a big budget, but it's not a bad film, and they've got some great special effects in it. But just so that I can be on location with them, he said, okay, why don't you be the market mall? So I had Afghan makeup on. I was to look like an Afghan person, but I don't say anything. I just kind of lead them.
Which you would get entirely canceled for now.
Exactly. Nowadays, true.
Totally different.
Great fun. It was great fun filming up north.
As you should, but yeah, I forgot about that. I was gonna say, I'm like, I don't remember you being in that movie.
But no, you wouldn't recognize me, Jessica.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. That's so funny. It's a throwback.
Right, well, Jessica, you were now switching into some real important questions, beyond that there. But you were the mentor director for Crystal Lowe in the Making Her Mark program.
That's right.
So tell us, A, what movie was it? And then B, just tell us about what that whole experience was like, because you're still pretty darn young and, trying to help other women become directors and all that.
Well, I appreciate that question because it's a wonderful program, and I think it being brought up and promoted anytime is awesome. We were the first to do it, so it was kind of like we were somewhat of the test subjects on it. And I know Crystal agrees, think it went really well. They've now done the next two directors have already shadowed. One is just finished directing their first episode, and the other one will do it next year. But it was, I got a call almost 2 years ago from Randy Pope at Hallmark, just kind of explaining what the program was, and that Ashley Williams, a wonderful actress and director in her own right, had created this program there. She had been talking about wanting to do this at Hallmark for years, and Hallmark being, the wonderful employers that they've proven themselves to be, thought it was a great idea. And there's some really great executives over there that really threw their weight behind the project, and we're kind of like, let's get this done. Let's make this happen. So they started with myself and Crystal, and Crystal and I actually had known each other. We did a movie together called Black Christmas, which was a remake of a horror film from the 70s. We did that 20 years ago. So we had known each other since we were like late teens, early 20s kind of thing. And I've known her ever since. I haven't seen her all that much, but like we've seen each other here and there, and I've always kept in touch. So when they told me it was Crystal, it was like, I was already really interested in doing it. But when I heard it was Crystal, I was like, yeah, 100%. I mean, because I had also known that she had been trying to get into directing for the better part of a decade at this point as well. And it takes time, as I know, because I did doing my own shadowing when I was on a series called The 100 as an actor. I had at one point asked them if they would be okay with me starting to shadow some of the directors and producers, and in an effort to become a director, but I just wanted to shadow everybody. It was like anyone that would teach me anything, I wanted to be there and learn. So I was very privileged to have the opportunity to spend 4 years over on that Warner Brothers show, learning from really amazing people and who were so kind and gracious with giving me their time and energy and teaching me so much of what I now know about directing and just being a better filmmaker in general. And it I never lost sight of the fact that in order to really be successful in this industry, yeah, sure, it takes talent on some level, but it really comes down to oftentimes who you know, but it's really comes down to the encouragement and the help of others in the industry. We need, we work as a collective. It takes a lot more than one people. It takes hundreds to make a film, and thousands in some instances on series and stuff. So you're looking at such a large collective of people, all with one end goal, all with one, story that they're trying to tell to the best of everybody's ability. It's such a beautiful collection of differently and also like-minded human beings, that when you kind of look at it that way, it really is, I really don't personally see any other way forward than to help one another. It takes that. You have to have people open doors for you. You just have to be ready to go when the door gets opened. So for me, when I was given the opportunity to direct, I felt that I had maybe not enough at that point, but just enough that I felt comfortable standing on set as a director and trying my hand and then learning from that experience. And I knew as soon as I was given that opportunity that the least I could do is pay that forward. So I've had many shadows at this point now. And so when they came up with that program, I think it was so brilliant. And so Crystal came out and we did a movie called Dream Moms together, where she shadowed me on that, which was not an easy film. I mean, none of them are, but to try to both of those actresses, Chelsea and Tamara. Oh no, I dropped the soother. They had to learn multiple dance numbers, songs, all of that, and all of their lines. Like they had to do all of the normal things you have to do on a Hallmark movie, plus all of their routines and recording all of the the songs and all of that ahead of time. It was a lot of work for those women and for all of us involved. So it wasn't an easy thing to make, but it was so wonderful having Crystal there too. She helped a lot in it. I had her direct a couple of scenes in the movie. And then when it came time for her to direct last fall, I came out as her sort of creative executive producer and was with her, supposed to be with her the whole time, but I was with her for prep. And I was in the early stages of my pregnancy last fall. And I was so sick that I ended up having to leave her in Ottawa and come home because I couldn't even get out of bed. I was so ill. And luckily they sent over LL, who's another wonderful director at Hallmark, who I've also known for years. She flew out and sort of took over as the sort of mentor person on set for Crystal. But I mean, I don't even know at that point that Crystal needed it. She's such a talented person on so many fronts, and I think she makes a wonderful director. But yeah, we had a great time. We had a blast together. We were able to laugh, have fun, roll our eyes a lot. It was all of the things you do on a film set on a day-to-day basis. So,
yeah. Cynde, now I thought we were the same age, but when we talked a little bit earlier, you're just a little bit older than I am. So, but similar experience though. So I started my career in advertising, and it was crazy just how different the world was then. Just the the things that just went on in the workplace. Like today, people could not even imagine, whatever, just crazy different times. What was it like for you then? I guess that would be the late 70s, early 80s, being a woman breaking into the entertainment industry, going through all the things where it seemed like there'd be extra hurdles that you would have had to be jumping that men just wouldn't.
You know what? That, believe it or not, was never the case for me. I never actually saw that. I didn't feel it. I never came up against it. And I think that's because I don't recognize it generally. I come from a family of 6 girls. And so there was never any seats. We were just raised to think we could be anything. My father and mother were so supportive, especially my dad, who you say you've worked in the dental industry before. He was a dentist. And he was just there for everything we did, all the sports. I was heavy into sports and gymnastics and so on. And then, so it wasn't strange that I ended up in film. My father was a big home movie, did all his own movies, and he would put titles on them and audio and everything. So he kind of should have been a documentary filmmaker, I think, as opposed to a dentist. But I just thought I could do anything. So I never thought, oh, I can't get that job. I was always offered jobs that I went out for. I would always look at, well, what do I need? I don't have that skill set. Go get it. Go take a little course in assistant directing. Go take a little course in, this. I've studied accounting, so someone certainly can hire me in accounting because I actually went to a proper accounting school. And most film people at that time in accounting were not. They were just training underneath someone, and then they would go. They never took accounting before. They were just somebody's girlfriend or whatever. So I never really felt that, believe it or not. And the movement to get there was what the experience of fighting to get there. And it didn't matter whether it was female or male. So I have a different perspective with the whole world and what's happened. I do know that, yes, there's way fewer female directors, or there was years ago. So it was nice to have the opportunities and to maybe to train, and if there were people suffering from, hey, I'm trying to get into that field and I'm not getting there. Maybe accounting, the way I went in accounting, there were fewer men who were trying to get those jobs. And so I already had those jobs, and then it went straight from there to production management, and production management to producing, because I just wanted to do my own things. And so I wasn't waiting for a job. So again, it was a little bit different. I was given this opportunity to be able to direct, because after 46 years in the business, I wanted to do something that was a bit more on my creative side. And I had been, an actress, and watched my husband and my daughter on set. Of course, I'm on set a lot watching directors. So out of my 46 years, I've got experience. So I've sort of been shadowing, I suppose, for my whole life. But someone gave me that opportunity, like Jessica said. And it was because I spent a whole bunch of time with that company for 4 years, helping them with a very big backlog of accounting and so on. Even though I was a producer for them, I went, oh, you need help in this. Let me help you get caught up with these tax returns, this. So they kind of went, what can we do for you?
I think it's also, when you look at it back then too, there's I think what being in the arts, not that there has not been a huge struggle for women in our industry, there absolutely has, but Mom was also in a position where she was in jobs that were generally women. Like, there were a lot of female accountants, there were, and production managers and stuff. Those positions were filled often by women and men, but like the directors, there were no female directors.
So I didn't
there
feel
was very
problem.
few.
Yeah.
So back then, she wasn't after positions. Okay, hi, I know, I'm sorry.
I'll take over. You put that soother back in. Yeah, I mean, but I have been part of, and so same with my husband Alan, who was the Directors Guild chairman of the British Columbia Directors Guild of Canada, and he put in place a lot of different sessions and so on for female directors, or for them to get a chance to get some training or something, a little short film, so that they could then get that going. And he has had a lot of people shadow him as well before there were any such things. So I think we've all helped to make that come up to parity, but the networks have all sort of asked for 50% parity with women and men. So it's been, over the last 5 years, it really has come up. And in fact, the pendulum has kind of swung. A lot of men don't have the jobs, and a lot of women are getting that opportunity, which is fantastic. But I think at some point it will just level out, and everybody will be on the same playing field. That's what your hope is for everything.
Obviously, you're a director. So what is the best part of being a director?
There's so many amazing parts. Honestly, I think for me, it's the same reason. It's the same thing that got me into film in the first place, that I was obsessed with from early age. It's the collective. It's the fact that there's so many different people. There's so many of us, and everyone comes generally from a different walk of life. There's those of us that had an in because we were born into it. So it was not only easier for us to have connections, of course, because it's very much about that. But we knew we didn't have to find the door to get in. And I'm always fascinated when people don't come from a film family background, or maybe didn't go to school for it, or even if they did, I'm always like, how did you get in? How did you get in here? Because it's almost like it's such a massive industry, but it's not necessarily like, it's not like there's a phone number you pick up and call that you're like, hi, like film industry, where do I go on Monday? Like, it's, how do you get in? It's a difficult, weird kind of back alley situation a lot of times. And it's often like one of the DPs that I work with, Will, he got in because he was working at like an ice rink, and I think there was some story about he went to a bar one night, was having a beer, and was needing to get a new job and wasn't getting enough money. And he ran into some friend of his from high school that was also at the bar, who happened to be an electrician in film and needed an extra guy in the upcoming days, and was like, yeah, I can pay you like a couple $100 in a day. And I think Will was like, what? Like, that's amazing. Okay. And so he jumped in, and then the rest is history. Now he's a cinematographer. Like, you hear a lot of stories like that where it's just kind of random, like a random invitation. It's almost Harry Potter, into this very strange world. So for me, I just love how many people it takes to do the job, how many people we need with such different mindsets and such different creative abilities. There's construction workers, there's accountants, there's art department, you've got costume designers, hair, makeup, graphic designers. There's so many different types of jobs all coming together for one result, one end game. And that's kind of rare. I think there's not a lot of industries that have that many different skill sets required to all come together for this one final product. So for me, just being a part of that machine is wonderful and fascinating, and you get to meet such interesting people, and we're all like-minded with that one element. But otherwise, I think we're very different in so many ways. So it's such an interesting circus of
and say it's the carnival. We always say
it's so
part of the carny. Who doesn't like to go to the carnival?
Yeah. So that's my favorite part. That, and also when you plan so hard, you work so tirelessly to get to just day one on set, you have all of these ideas, and then the location should look like this, and then I'm feeling like the background, and then this, that, the other, like all of those things, and then you speak to everybody involved, and then on the day when you're there and you're seeing it happen and it comes together the way you envisioned it or better, it's just such a great feeling. There's such a satisfaction to that feeling that becomes quite addictive. I always say filmmakers are addicts. Like, there's just a weird, it's a very, difficult in terms of the long hours and the exhaustion and all the other things that come with it. You have to sort of be an addict, I think, to want to participate in such a a taxing thing. You have to love it. You have to love it.
Cynde, you are more of in the producing than the directing. You directed Tipline. You mostly do producing. So I assume you get stacks and stacks of scripts all the time. What is something like when you're going through one, what is something like, how does it catch your eye and you just say, let's roll?
Well, that's changed over the years. Back in the day when we started producing things, we were not working in the Hallmark genre. So it was just anything and everything. And it would usually be a story that would, pull up my heartstrings in some way. Like our little family film, If I Had Wings, which we shot back in 2013. Jessica was in it, Richard was in it, Alan directed it, I produced it. And that was just a story about cross-country running, that I was a cross-country runner. The kids were cross-country runners. It just spoke to me like, oh, I can see it. I can see the race. I can see the whole thing. And it was difficult to get funding for that. And then finally I just went, no, I'm doing this film. I don't care how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to get this money for this film. So you start to just really move. So it has to speak to you. And that was always just, and these were unknown writers from Canada up north. So I don't care where a story comes from. I don't care who they are and if they're part of the union or anything else. Most of the writers we've hired for our personal company are like first timers, or they haven't even written it yet, but it's like, I can see it. They've done their little elevator pitch on the phone or wherever, and I can see it. And if I can sort of take the Coles Notes version and get excited to pitch it, then I can probably do this film. And if I can't get excited, I probably can't do it. And when I was visiting a broadcaster trying to get, a sale for one of the films that we were about to film. And they said, okay, but do you have anything that's Christmas? Well, I didn't, but this writer had just given me a quick, bird's eye view of what hadn't written the script. And I was able to like take enough of their enthusiasm and be able to get enthusiastic. And they said, oh, we can absolutely see it. I got a deal the next day. I had to go back to the first time writer and say, write the script. We're going to camera in 5 months. And they were like, what? So it has to be something that I can get excited about. But having said that, roll the tape forward, we're now doing a lot of one type of thing. So it might be Females in Peril for a lifetime, or I produced the V.C. Anders Heaven series. So it was 4 of the films that we did. Those are kind of, the network is part and parcel with things. And so you're not really choosing them. You have to choose projects to go to them that are in their genre. But it might be they have a lower budget division versus this. So now when I look at a script, it's like, we need something for this budget level. Okay, so if I tell the writer, do you have anything that's like not so many locations, not so many cast members, not because that's what I have to do in this area, this budget range. So now they're coming with things. So now when I'm reading synopsis, it's at a resort. It's probably one location. I'm going to do everything there. And that's probably going to fit. So now things catch me in a different way. But if I was doing indie films again, it better be something that's probably going to hook me from something that's happened in my past, or something that's a romance thing that I can identify with.
Jessica, I talked to Ron Oliver about a year ago, and he said with his scripts, one of the things that he just drives him crazy is he gets these scripts that have action that's physically impossible. And he gets that all the time where, like you're going this way, but all of a sudden you're that way or anything like that. Is that like something you've been encountering as well, where you just get these scripts and you're just scratching your head and you're like, oh, there's a story, but this is so just does not work at any level?
Yeah, it happens almost every script. It's kind of par for the course. You get them and you go through, and I find it's just part of my job to figure out, is it possible? The film I just completed, I'm not really allowed to say what we pulled off, but we did something that I've never heard of happening on a Hallmark film before. That I was we were all like, when I first read it, I was like, that's crazy. Why would they like, it's fine, but like, we're just going to cut it out, and it'll be, they're just walking here instead of whatever this thing is. And because there's no way we could do that. But then the more we talked about it as a crew, our location manager was like, well, maybe we could do that. Or maybe we could get, a location that has that particular thing happening in the background and we can showcase it. And I was like, yeah, maybe, but even then, is there a point? But I'm sure it might look cool. So then we did. And then by the time we finished, exactly what had been written, actually, we went way further than what had been written. We did something even crazier than what was written. And like, all of us were blown away. So sometimes, it's nice when a writer shoots for the stars, because you do try to go after it, but they're always, in every script, I have to note out all of the things. Like if they're in the car a whole bunch, that's really difficult for us. It's not that it's difficult to pull off. We can all pretty easily, shoot car scenes. It just requires, if you're actually going to be in a car out on the road, you have to pay for police to lock down the location. You have to actually find a location that will allow you to do it. You have to permit that area. There's a danger always when it comes to stuff like that. So the insurance is going to go up for that day. And not to mention that it takes hours. Like we did a driving scene in the last movie. The actors have 3 lines in this, and it took us building the rig the day before while we were shooting other things, which was several hours of a few grips time. Then it took almost 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours to shoot that morning for 3 lines. Like normally I can shoot, I could do a 5-page scene in 4 hours. So 3 lines in 4 hours doesn't generally end up being worth it when you know that you only have 15 days to shoot the entire script. So giving up 3 hours even for 3 lines, it just doesn't equate to really, like, you just really have to know that for us in it, we felt that added a lot of wonderful production value. We had a drone above the Jeep while it's driving. So it looks great. Like the DP and I discussed it and we thought, is it worth it? And we found a day that we had a little extra time. We knew we could pull it off. And we thought, okay, on this one, let's do it. But generally the driving stuff, I pull that like right out the gate. And then, and that's just driving. So you look at some of the big stunt things that are written sometimes. In a perfect world, we would do everything that was written. But when you're trying to make a movie in 15 days, it's just not plausible. So you kind of have to go through and pick what your preferences of things and to shoot, and then also the stuff that is plausible. Like there's in a lot of these scripts, for some reason, there's always people in a small boat and they fall in the water. I don't know why, but they do. I guess it's cute. It kind of is, but like that happens. That happens a lot, and you can't even imagine how many more times it happens in scripts that we remove. Because I'm like, it's November, like in Vancouver. I'm not putting 2 actors
underneath
it's thrown into water. It's, first of all, it's going to take us an entire day just to get that one scene, and they're going to have pneumonia and like all of these other things. So there's stuff like that you kind of go, yes, in a perfect world, sure. If we were shooting in the middle of July, yeah, we could probably pull something like that off, but there's just not, some things just aren't realistic, and you kind of have to go through and you have to explain what is and is not realistic. And then go from there and try to fill it in so you're not ruining the movie and, making it kind of boring and nothing. You have to try to find other fun reasons or other fun things to fill in its place. But it's it's always the first time I read almost any script, I'm just sitting there going, no, can't do that.
But you know what? It's okay for them to start that, because production is always going to go click, 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 have to do it.
Yeah,
we sort of put it together.
This is what we do.
That doesn't match anywhere else, so let's rewrite that scene in where the resort is. They're already there and they just go out front. You just have to. That's
you find workarounds for everything, which is also kind of the fun part. Like as frustrating as it can be sometimes, because you're like, we can't pull this off. Sometimes you end up proving that you can, and if you can't, then there's 100 people that are working amongst you, and there's always a few really cool ideas for alternatives that I find end up being better a lot of times. Like because everyone has to get creative. You have to stop and think, well, how do we express the same emotion or the same feeling to the audience in a way that we can actually realistically pull off? And you get some really interesting ideas coming out of that. So it ends up being part of the fun.
Along those lines, we as fans are very naive, and we think, you should be able to do this, you should be able to do that. What's like something that most fans just don't understand about the entertainment industries, specifically Hallmark? That's what we're here to talk about. Like one of the ones that people are always like, oh, give us more Mystery 101, and they just can't, for a variety of reasons. It's just, you can't. So for you guys, like, what are something that, us as fans just don't understand that would help us better understand the business of Hallmark and movies?
I'll add some things. Politics is sometimes very much it. If the production team who owns the rights to that isn't talking to the production team, or there's been a falling out, or the actors, there's been a falling out. I mean, there's many things, and nobody will ever hear about those things. We won't know, even ourselves sometimes. It just can't go on because it's business.
Yeah, people move on. People, like, if it's an executive in charge of a certain wheelhouse that isn't there any longer, or if we know internally that the numbers aren't high enough to equate to bringing a certain thing back, then it's a business. At the end of the day, it is a business, and a lot of people put a lot of love into these films from the network all the way down. And but at the end of the day, if it's not making money, it's a problem. No, because no one will last in that. Like the executives were fired for stuff like that. So that's a route to certain things. If it's about bringing certain shows back or keeping them going, sometimes that's the problem. Which is like any network and any film, but I think a lot of times what I've seen, and I did a podcast the other day that asked me about, I forget what it was, but they were saying one of my films, they were like, there was an issue, or it's like something came up, uh it was a mystery, and there was kind of a hole, like this got brought up but it was never resolved, and I went, we just didn't leave it in the movie because we had to cut it for time. So that ends up being something that I think sometimes, and maybe there are moments, I'm sure, where we did just screw up and we missed it, like we all missed it or whatever, that we're human, that will happen. But for the most part, specifically with the mysteries, so when something is dropped or not, doesn't come full circle, or you as an audience watch it and go, well, but whatever happened to that, or this element didn't make sense, it's more likely than not because the film was a little long, because they always are, like, you can't make a movie, it's impossible to make a movie exactly to the time that the network's going to air on television. It's always going to be hopefully longer than shorter. Shorter's a real problem, but you're always going to be anywhere between like minimum 8 minutes long, going way up. I've had movies that are almost 30 minutes long. Try cutting 30 minutes out of an 83-minute film. Like, that is
messing up
brutal.
You're really messing up on something like
storyline. So you have to go through with very limited time and dissect what can you pull, what when you pull this, what can of worms does that open? How many things for the rest of the film are now part of that? I mean, I did that.
Widows. We find widows at the end.
Yeah, we call them
that's a widow from that other storyline we removed.
Yeah. So you have to be really cautious, especially with the mysteries is where it's most problematic. And we had an issue on, or mine was quite long on the one I'm doing right now. It's not a mystery, but so it was a little easier to pull, but we took something out and we were like, well, if we take this one scene out, it just created a domino effect of, and we did it, we were able to do it, but we had to go through the rest of the film and clean up any piece of a callback to anything that came from that one scene. So when you're looking at a mystery, it becomes really, really difficult to edit those in a way that keeps every element buttoned up, where everything has a completion. You sometimes just have to sit there and go, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. We have no choice. There's nothing, no other place we can cut from. This one element's just not going to have closure or not quite make sense. And we do our best to find ways to, you ADR line. So you add a line on someone's back when like the camera's facing the other direction to try to fill in some information, stuff like that. You kind of try to, like, I always call it like Edward Scissorhanding, like something together. You're kind of trying to band-aid it. And I do see that the audience gets frustrated with that. And I cannot explain to you enough. You'll never be as frustrated as we are. It'll never annoy you as much as it annoys us, because you put so much work and love into something and telling the story, and then when you have to see stuff like that get cut out, it really just it hurts. It hurts us. It really does, because we want you to see the film the way that we envisioned it, the way that we made it. We want it to be as close to perfect as we could get it, and unfortunately it's never gonna be that. So yeah, that's the stuff that really irks, I think, us on this side of things. Is we feel bad and we get it, and we know, when people are like, but it's missing, I'm like, I know, I hate it, you're not wrong. It sucks. It's frustrating.
Let's talk some mystery then, and specifically Tipline. We just did our ranking of all the 2024 mysteries. I ranked Tipline my favorite of the entire year. Andrea had it number 5. So what was it that drew you guys? I know, tough, right? But what was it that drew you to this project?
Well, it was for me, I was pregnant and I had to leave Crystal's show and was very sick and was off for a few months. And right when I was starting to feel better, I got a call about the show, and I was kind of feeling like it would be nice to have a distraction and to go back to work for a little bit. And they were able to, it was right in the sweet spot right before we were going to be shooting the second and third Aurora films. So I was able to do it, and these were coming up, and our executive on Tipline called and wanted to talk about the job, and had known that Mom and I had wanted to co-direct something for a while now, and was like, I think this might be a great opportunity for you to do this together. So what do you think? And once we found out, you know, first of all, I love the mysteries. I really enjoy doing the mystery films a lot. And so I'm always interested in anything Hallmark mystery related. Like almost always, just sign me up. You don't even need to pitch me the script. I'm like, I'm probably in. But then when Laura mentioned that this would be a good opportunity for Mom and I to do it, it was like, yeah, of course, like that's for sure, we're in 100%. And then when we read it, we were really taken back by what a fun and kind of new script idea it was. You know, there's elements, of course, that are formulaic like anything, but it was, I really liked the fact that the Maddie character wasn't someone in their 20s. And not that there's anything wrong with telling a story of someone in their 20s, but the fact that Maddie was this person who was a little bit older, and yet still kind of struggling to find her place and struggling to find what she really wants to do in life, and is balancing and juggling multiple jobs to get by. I thought that really rang true to life, because as much as we love, you know, the fantasy elements of some of these films, there are some things that are somewhat unrealistic. Like when you see the movies where, and I've made a lot of them, where someone's, you know, struggling to make rent, yet they live in a house that clearly costs $10 million in New York. Like it doesn't quite make sense, it doesn't quite add up. Whereas this one, there was just something that felt really real about it.
Relatable. I think
Yeah, it was definitely
relatable.
relatable.
Relate with her. Yeah.
And then Holland was hilarious and amazing. Like once we kind of got on set and we had these ideas of what each set looked like, and the tip line office, what that looked like, and our production designer just, I mean, and the art department team were incredible. They made all of those things just look so real, and you could feel them. The sets were great to work in. And then getting Chris and Holland there, and the rest of the cast too, but having those two in their dynamic, not that it was, you know, not to say that there isn't a potential romance, because clearly there is, but I really enjoyed the fact that they just kind of came across as partners right now. Like they were, and hilarious about it, but it wasn't specifically a love story. Like it was really about these two people, these two kind of odd ducks, and what they could accomplish together. We both really loved making that movie, and it was a lot of fun to shoot too.
Yeah, she's so quirky in real life as well. She's
Holland's amazing,
quite similar to the character in many ways, and they're both very dedicated to their work. You know, they really work hard. They really read the script and, you know, would my character do this or say that, or maybe so they're very involved. They don't just like, okay, you know, where do you want me to stand, and I'll just do it how it's written. It's not about that. They both really look carefully and feel for who their character is. They want to become that character. So for my first time, I mean, I'm always around sets, and so to be involved with that and having to discuss where that character is coming from and how they see it, because both Jessica and I want to give actors the freedom to build that character. I mean, hopefully the character is going to go on. That was what we also, this would be so much fun if it continues on, and I think it did well, and therefore there will be a future for it, and I'm so happy about that. And they were both just so lovely to work with.
Well, you talked about
Jessica getting sick occasionally.
Yeah,
gonna lay down for a moment. Oh,
yeah.
Jessica.
I would go and take naps occasionally for sure. Mom definitely had to command that set without me.
You talked about Holland and Chris. Did you have a say in any of the casting, or was it like, here you go, here's the mystery, and here's your leads?
It's always the number one, which is generally the female role, is always determined by the network. And I mean, they have
certainly in conjunction with the producers too. I mean, they're never going to say that's it, you're working with them.
No.
But if it's a Hallmark film or if it's a Canadian content, the producers, the story and so on is coming from those producers, they'll be more involved. It just depends, because Hallmark has two kinds of films, ones that they're the producer and one that the other person is the producer. So it just depends on how much then.
Regardless of which type it is, we don't get to make that decision. It's never ours. But they have a long list of wonderful actors that they choose from, and they're always looking at more as well, but they usually have someone in mind. So generally when the director gets brought on, the network already has someone that they've sort of like created the script in mind with. And same with the male lead as well. There's usually an idea. They usually have an idea of who they're thinking. If they haven't already contracted them, oftentimes they have. When the director comes on, there's already actors attached. But all the other characters, what happens is the director and the producers are given the tapes of all the different actors that have auditioned for all of the characters, and we all watch those and then have somewhat of a negotiation. And oftentimes it's you kind of just everyone has their top 3 or 4 choices for each character, and then you bring them all together and you see what lines up. And a lot of times they're very similar lists. Yeah, sometimes they're totally not, which is when things become a little bit more difficult. There's a lot of negotiating that goes on.
You thought that? Oh my God.
Yes, it was just like shocking how different but it's art subjective. Like you just see characters in totally different way. Like you'll see someone where I'm like, I was thinking they were like in their 70s, and someone else will be like, really? I thought they were supposed to be in their 20s. And like, because if it wasn't written very specifically for an age or a type of person, I should say, then you don't you see it how you want to see it. And so you kind of have a very specific idea in mind sometimes, and it can be hard to change some people's mind, or your own mind for that matter. But we narrow it down to usually about 3 choices per role, and then that gets sent to the network, who then makes the decision from that moment onward. So and they often it's a conversation between everybody, and we kind of discuss why.
You might say start again, but
and sometimes it's go back and
we'd
like to see a few more options, and that's fine too. And there's always other people.
And then we change the script. It's actually not a 16-year-old; it's a 25-year-old fresh out of college. It's like,
you end up changing the dynamic, which is always fascinating. Like there's an actor in the last film I did who the character was supposed to be maybe in their 30s, early 30s, and one of the producers thought, God, I always thought that it was supposed to be someone older. I pictured it older. I was like, no, I think it's supposed to be someone younger. That's why they haven't gotten to the managerial position yet. That's why they don't even think of him to be the manager. And the further we talked about that, I was like, I think it would be interesting older. You just need to change the dynamic. Then he becomes almost like, not a father figure to them per se, but kind of a fun uncle. And maybe there's something to that. Maybe like the pride he takes in the girls in their 30s, maybe there's a little more interesting of a connection to them. And he's been around since they were kids, so he can speak to that. And the more we talked about that, the more we all really loved the idea. So we changed the character and it was because we had seen an actor. I had asked, just open the age qualifications to anybody, any age, any ethnicity, whatever. And we had an actor, Tim Perez, come in and do a wonderful performance. And as soon as we saw it, we all went, well, that's him then, and said that to the network, and they fully agreed. And we just had to amend the script slightly to kind of make that make sense. But you'll see that happen a lot, where we find the right actor and then you change the character to suit the actor, which is always cool. It's always a fun surprise.
Love it. Cynde, so you got your directing thing under your belt. Did you have fun? Do you think you want to do more directing, or is it like, okay, hey, I did that, checked off, and back to producing?
I would very much like to do more, because it that was kind of like just learning, almost like shadowing, except for I actually had a chance to be in the director's chair in a number of circumstances where Jessica would be off the set anyway. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm in. But to prep everything from the very beginning, knowing, no, this is my responsibility, break down the scenes and, the blocking for the scene, that sort of thing. Jessica was very good. We were, part and parcel with that. She'd say, well, you're going to be directing those scenes, so they're going to be your shots. You're going to figure that out. And so I did have to be there, but it would be interesting to know from the beginning, okay, do the whole thing, whether you're doing this alone or co-directing again. Now I kind of like, okay, that was a good trial run. Now let me get in there. I mean, I'm always excited about everything. I love to try different things. I've worked a lot of different positions in film over the years. But I also am always hanging around set. I've always gotten to know the crew and the cast very well. I don't just kind of, I'm in some office somewhere. Never. I'm there when that beginning starts and everyone's just arriving, because I figure if there's going to be any problems, it's going to happen right there. We've just arrived. The location is a mess. Someone's not letting us on there, whatever. Right until the very last. What if there's an accident or something happens? So I'm there from the very beginning, other than the makeup artist, maybe in a trailer might be before me, right to the very end. We're wrapped. Is everyone cleaned up? We're not. Oh, we've got to be out of here by now. I'm pulling cable. So I've always been right in the trenches, no matter what position. The toilets had to be cleaned, or we're going to be never getting that location again. All these things matter to me, and I'm not above any of those positions. So to get a chance to direct has been great. But I have two directors in my family, so I don't really want to take work away from my husband or my daughter. Not that they'd ever hire me before them. They're veterans now. My husband's been doing this for 46 or more years. And they're both at the top of their game. So why would they hire me? I have a lot of energy, though. I'd like to try it again, sure.
Because you co-directed Tipline, and it was a fantastic film.
It's Eric's favorite, so hey.
Number one, right?
Exactly.
Let's talk some Aurora now. So Jessica, you directed something new, right? Back the original prequel. And now we have the two new ones.
Yeah.
Did you like really spend much time with the original, or were you like, hey, this is a whole new series, I'm going to do it completely a whole new fresh way? Or were you trying to maintain some consistency with the original?
Well, I mean, I wanted to. So when I was offered that, I was really excited about the idea of this new franchise and reboot of it. And I wanted to make sure that we were honoring the first films, because I mean they did 18 of them. They obviously, got renewed for a reason. They had a huge audience and they did really well, and they were really fun films. So for me, I wanted to make sure that we were honoring that. And we did certain things, like in the diner of our film, there's photographs that they're never like super focused on, but like the black and white photographs in the diner are actually all photos of the real town that they shot them, because they shot the original series in Vancouver and we shoot the new one in Victoria. So we're shooting an entirely different city than
Nice Easter egg.
So yeah, so we planted a bunch of photos from the original. I think there might even been a photo of the waterfall that's in the opening. It's like in every Aurora, like the original series. So we just wanted to sort of pay homage to the work that had been done, because clearly a lot of work and love had been put into those films, and we wanted to respect that. So we did little things like that where we could, and I think when it comes to the characters, it was big discussions with the actors of wanting to make sure that they were able to, that they had the right to do their own character and their own interpretation of their characters, but also knowing that we know where those characters go. We see where they land in 15 years or whatever it is. So we know where they kind of end up as people and the jobs that they end up in, and we know what ends up happening between Arthur and Aurora. So what do we want to say happened between now and then to turn them into those people, which is just kind of a fun place to be. Like I think some people might find that stifling in some ways, but none of us did. We kind of found that it was kind of a fun thing to be able to tell the origin story. What happened to any of these people? What happened, like to Sally in the first one, that would have slightly changed her as a person in order to become who she ends up becoming. So we've had a lot of fun with just that idea in general. When it came to trying to create the same look of the first one, I started going back through the first ones thinking that maybe that's what they had wanted. And then the more we discussed it, the more I was then told, no, we weren't married to any of that. And it wasn't the same director that did all the first series anyway. So they had always allowed them to be somewhat creative, or they always allowed them to be creative, and to kind of, each director was allowed to just do what they want, like create the shots and design that they want. So it wasn't like there was a very specific look to the first series that we were trying to capture. And once we kind of realized that that was okay with everyone, that we try to make something look a little bit different, Will McKnight, our DP, and I, then that's when we kind of felt comfortable creating an entirely new look for this one, and making it its own kind of thing, because it's all new locations. It's obviously an entirely new cast, other than Mary Lou Henner, because the woman doesn't age; she's aging backwards somehow. And other than that, we wanted to create something that was kind of fresh, maybe, for the network. And because it's a younger cast, we wanted it to feel a little playful and colorful, and kind of play with those ideas. So I think look wise, we went in kind of a new direction, at least for the stuff that Will and I have worked on together before. We wanted to make something that looked a little different to the other films that we've done. And I think we got there. I think it's a very colorful film, and you see that with her wardrobe, you see that with her hair, you see that with everything. Like, it's bright, and dark in places too. And I just really hope that we get to keep going, because I know that there's some ideas for some future ones, including one which I will not share, but that Mary Lou came up with, that I think is brilliant and would love to be able to do. So there's a lot more to these stories that we'd really like to tell. So hopefully people like it, and the audience is there, and we'll be able to keep going with it, because it's been a really great show to be a part of. And also, I gotta hand it to Mary Lou. She's kind of our guiding light. Like, anytime any of us had questions, she also happens to have a memory on her,
Right.
like that's written about in textbooks. The woman doesn't forget a single thing. So she was able to really help with the letting the other actors know when they had questions about, like, what happened here and what happened. Like, she's a wealth of information for all of us, from the original series. Just been amazing. So that's super helpful as well. But yeah, that's all around been really fun. Where does the Aurora land on your list? Now I gotta know.
All right, we'll get there.
We'll
We'll
get
get there. When we talked to Skylar and Madison Smith last year, for something new, they both said that, we said, what should we be excited about? And they brought up the camera angles, the lighting, the color. By the way, Skylar, with her red hair and that purple sweater in the very first scene of Lesson in Murder, amazing, amazing. So I agree with you there. But it's also like much darker, and it's kind of did this with Tipline a little bit, but even more so with the Aurora there than you normally see in Hallmark mysteries, or Hallmark in general for that matter. But so was that like something that was just exciting for you too? And you kind of, I guess, did answer it, but it's like 100 times amped up than normal, like Hallmark. I don't like, one of the things we keep calling it is the direction. It's so noticeable in this, in a good way, by the way, because you can be
I'll take that.
noticeable in a bad way, but you know, it's just so unique there. So was that like part of your thing, to be unlike literally anything else in the catalog?
Yes, it was very much something that Will and I spoke at length about. In it, and I got to hand it to Joel Rice and Scott Clayton, our producers, and our network executives as well, like everyone at the network, were really supportive of this. They were really behind creating this sort of new world and this new take on an old world, but having to be in a new location and all of those things. Because everything is going to look different anyways, what can we do with that? Can we just kind of run with it? And we had so much support from the network and producers in doing that Will and I kind of felt comfortable with swinging for the fences on this one more than we normally would want to push, because you have to always remember that there's an audience, a large audience for Hallmark, that they keep coming back, and they keep coming back for a reason. There's a consistency to this genre and to the network in general that you're looking for. You're coming back because you're looking for something, that you've seen, sure, time and time again, and maybe there's a slight variation, but we felt that, why not push the boundaries a little bit more on this one, because we believe that the audience would be okay with it. We hope that the audience would be okay with it, and that it wouldn't be so different that they'd find that jarring, or that they, it didn't feel like it was the tried, tested, true method. And I think Hallmark in general, the last few years, has been pushing their boundaries, and they're opening up their stories and the content, and they've been doing, like, I did a time travel movie 2 years ago. They're doing more period piece, the
Which was the
mysteries are
time
getting
travel?
Rip in Time.
Okay.
The time travel film, and which I did with Will on the island actually as well, but it was our first film together. But there's a lot. I find that they're sort of starting to tell stories that have a little darker subject matter to them, and with that those changing elements, it feels only natural that the style would change as well. That not that we're going to go full euphoria on it, like we're not going to go crazy and completely throw everybody out of whack, but it did feel like this was a safe place to push a little further, to try something new, and to have some fun. And everyone was so wonderfully supportive that we were able to actually pull it off. I feel that we pulled it off. And it's, I know that everyone that was a part of those films is really proud to have been a part of them. Whether that translates to the audience, I don't know entirely. I know some people feel beholden to the first one in a way that makes them feel, I suppose, that they can't watch the new one. And I get that. Like, there's probably series that I've seen that I wouldn't want to reboot, but for me, I always kind of say, I'm like, but we're not remaking the first one. We're making a different series with the same beloved characters, and I feel that there's room for all of it. I don't see why, it should be one or the other. It seems like, just, I always love origin films though, so maybe that's me. But yeah, I feel like we had a lot of fun, and that translates, and I would really love to do more, because we have more cool shots we want to shoot.
Well, I have a couple thoughts that are going to come up in a minute about what you had just said, but we talked to Dave, the writer of this, and that will be airing next week. But we heard that Kevin's lines were not, he's like, I wish I could take credit for him, but he didn't write them. And they were just absolutely hilarious. Now, was this just him totally riffing, or was this you sort of saying, feeding him what you wanted him to say? Because like the onions, like, we only want, half the onions. No, I'm going to give you more onion. Like, that just cracked me up. So
I think that was Kevin. There was that scene, in order to make that character, because we only had one day with him. So in order to make it so that we could have that actor come and play that character all in one day, we had to rewrite it ourselves pretty quickly. And Scott Clayton, our producer, is actually the one who came up with a lot of the stuff that you see in those scenes. That was Scott. And myself kind of jumping in here and there, but that was really, I gotta hand that to Scott. And then also Kevin, because when he showed up, he would just like, I think the onions was him, like he would just keep talking, like we just wouldn't cut. He was just going on and on and on and on and on. So yeah, it was kind of a collective. And like when he throws the keys, I was the one that was like, set some stuff up in the background and just like huck them at her. And it was like, and Sally, just don't even try to grab it. Like it just goes by your head and knocks everything over. So there's things like that that kind of come up on the day that you go, great, let's run with that now. That's funny. Like, let's do that. But I mean, Kevin was he's so funny and he was so delightful to have on set. He just nailed that character too. But no, a lot of that was improvised by him for sure.
And enough where, well, by the way, that was one where no one figured out who it was. And because once again, being collective is just not something we normally see, but it's enough where I knew it couldn't be Kevin, but at the same time, I thought it was him too. So great. All right. I'll have to say though, you broke me in this one because I have two soapboxes that I stand on. One of them is traditional marriage is just two people who love each other. Doesn't matter what they are, just anything, you love each other, fine. But my other one that I stand on is I hate that older men are constantly being cast opposite significantly younger women as their love interest. And yet you had Cook with D.A. Morris, and I just loved it. I was like, more, I want them together. I loved everything about them. So my like big rule, you broke me. You broke me. It's just love those two characters, and I love them together.
Yeah, I can't take credit for the casting on that one, but because that's always the cameos are sent from above. I'm kind of with you because I got to be honest too. When I first found out that they wanted Kimberly, I kind of went to be married to Steve, and like no offense, because I know in Steve's mind, Steve's still like 32 years old, and I don't even actually know how old Steve is because
he's 57.
Is he? Yeah, he looks like he stopped aging in his like maybe mid 40s. So I wouldn't have even guessed at 57. But Kimberly also, there's such a kind of maturity and like a like strength to Kimberly, I think just in general as a person. And it really comes through in this character as well, that their age gap, I didn't even notice it when we were there and watching it because she's kind of the only person that can bring him down.
Right.
And seems to have some sort of, I don't want to say control because that sounds like scary, but
Right.
But for lack of a better word, yeah, control. Like she just has this power over Cook. Like the character has the power over him. And they were so funny together. And then watching Evans, who plays Arthur, his response to them just killed me because we knew when they were coming in, when it was Kimberly coming in, I started designing the shots to play into the comedic element of it. So like having Kimberly and Steve standing like that and just being like Evan just awkwardly kind of standing, between them. That's that sort of thing. We wanted to make sure that Evan was present for all of that and just wildly uncomfortable all the time in terms of being dragged into that. And on top, I mean, you want to talk about two people that are great together in a scene, Evan and Steve Basic
100%.
Together. I mean, my God. And that was one thing that I will take credit for, because when the network originally, and the first one said, we're thinking Steve Basic for Cook, I kind of was like, oh, okay. Like, yes, I love Steve, but I wasn't expecting that. And I was like, you know what? That's great. Actually, I think that there's going to be a lot of comedy between these two characters. And I will never forget them going, wait, sorry, what? And I was like, I think that's going to be really funny between these two. And they're like, no, that's not funny. It's not. Those ones aren't supposed to be funny together. I was like, no, it's going to be hilarious. It just, no one kind of understood what I meant by that, because it's not written funny. It wasn't written comedically between those two people. It was really actually written to be that he's kind of scary and, lords over Arthur's character a bit, like he's the rookie, which is true. But then the idea that maybe there's like a father figure there as well in the future. And I just knew, I was like, I feel like it's going to be really funny between these two. And I talked to both of the actors about it. And when Steve and I first spoke, I was like, this is the kind of guy that doesn't get that they're laughing at him, that he's not in on the joke. He doesn't get it. And I'm like, he's the type of guy that I think goes home at night and watches, his VHS tape of Dirty Harry over and over and over again. And like, he thinks he's that guy. Like, he thinks he's Clint Eastwood, and he takes that seriously. He's got his leather jacket, and like, he takes himself really seriously, but nobody else does. And he doesn't really get that they don't get that. So when him and Evan started working together, I mean, it was like, you should just see us on set, and they are constantly ad-libbing stuff. Steve cannot stop ad-libbing. It's always cracking us up, but we'll be in tears behind the monitors watching it. Cause the two of them, I mean, the first one, when Steve kicks the chair out every time he's interviewing someone, he just started doing that. He just started kicking the chair every time he left. He's not actually even was scripted to be leaving the interview rooms. Steve would just kick the chair, get up, and slam the door. And like, that's not scripted. And then we would do the next interview, and he would do it again and do it again. And it got to the point where I forget who it was, but someone kind of looked at me and was like, are you going to tell him to not do that? And I was like, I was, but now it's kind of growing on me. I think we have to leave it in. And then you get to the point where at one point, Evan, like, he leaves, and Evan, I don't remember, I think it made it into the movie, but Evan looked at one of the suspects and just goes, he does that a lot. So, and like, it just killed me. Like, the two of them together have become such a funny buddy cop, like, comedy, that I mean, I would watch so many more of these films for those two characters together alone. I think the casting of those two people was really, they nailed it. The network nailed it.
Andrea has always talked about Steve Basic and how she loves him, and it goes back, she loves Garage Sale Mysteries, but just in general, she just loves Steve Basic. And I'm always like, I like Steve Basic. I have nothing against the guy, but I have now officially become the treasure of the Steve Basic fan club because of this series and his character and exactly how you've described him.
So now you have to go back and watch Afghan Nights, because Steve Basic is in Afghan Nights.
Afghan Nights, that's
Oh,
true.
seriously?
Right.
Yeah, he's the lead in that.
Like the lead.
Yeah.
He's the lead. So we know Steve we've known him and his family and children for many, many years.
Well, maybe you'll then go ahead and tell him he needs to be on the podcast for us.
Oh, of course.
He's not a very social media guy, so we don't really connect with him. But all right.
Oh no, I'll connect you. I don't think he
Andrea's brain would explode.
Oh yeah, we'll get him on here.
So you'd asked about, where did the Auroras land? I have flat out said that the new Auroras, hands down, have passed the originals, and they are just better. Andrea, who loved the original series, she has gotten to the point now where she has said, I agree, they are better than the originals. People, when first something new came out, would flood our comments with, hell no, it's CCB or nothing for me. They now are starting to acknowledge, okay, this is pretty good stuff. So for me, the Lesson of Murder was 1A. I want to say it was 2 for Andrea. So it was basically 2 for me too. And then the Dinner at the Diner, or Death at the Diner, Death at the Diner, I want to say was like 4 or 5. So, and it was just because Cases of Mystery Lane is a fantastic one as well. But they, so good. And the fact, like I said, we had so much hate the first go around, and this time people it's killing them, but they're acknowledging that the series is just fantastic. Which now that brings me to my next one, this is for both of you, for Tipline and Aurora. We as sleuthers want more, especially we like get to know these characters. Now you've had the 3 with Aurora, and we've seen how it's grown and gotten better and better. We've only had 1 with Maddie, and we want more. So what can we do as fans to make this happen, to make sure we get more Aurora and we get more Maddie?
Keep asking. I mean, we all would love those movies to continue as well, and I think time will tell. But I think with, the launch of Hallmark Plus recently. That's been a big thing this year. Obviously, Hallmark preparing to launch the streaming service of theirs. That's a really big deal for any network. And it doesn't always work. I mean, we've seen it fail for other studios and other networks as well. So it's one of those things that we really would advise that the fans, as much as possible, jump onto that streaming platform, because it has been somewhat the way that studios and networks have been going. It is the future in a lot of ways, and no one would want to lose Hallmark to just, not that there's anything wrong with just being a channel, but obviously streaming was the next step. And I think they've got some really fun and really cool new series that they're throwing onto the series or the streaming platform that you're not going to get on the channel. So if everybody kind of jumps on there and watches those movies, and honestly commenting on the IMDb stuff, commenting in general, like commenting onto the Hallmark mysteries page, any of those things, they pay attention to that stuff. They really do. They really do hear their fans. They love including their fans in what they do, and not just because it's where the numbers are coming from, but I think it's a really great network for including you see all the conventions and stuff that they do, and getting the actors and stuff together. It's really important for them that the fan base feels that they are able to be in touch with us, that there's not a huge gap between what we do and what they do and what they bring to the table. It's a family at Hallmark, and I think they look at the audience as an extension of that family. They're part of it. So for us, just flood those comment sections, like all of the things on their Instagram accounts, and more than anything, jump on the new streaming platform and watch the films. Make sure that they
more Tipline, or we want
like
they are doing a party. A couple of people with placards. There's always news and social media, and if they happen to see that sign, you never know what they're saying. What happened to Veronica Mars? That series was canceled, and it was the fans who just went crazy saying, no, you've got to finish this series. And that's actually Chris McNally's wife. Julie was in that. I've worked with Julie and Chris before, but so it does. Social media works.
Yeah, it does.
It does. So, keep doing what you're doing. And when people know, oh, look, this was our number one, or this is in the top 5, those things matter. People look at those numbers. They certainly do have numbers,
and talking about it. Like, honestly, thank you so much for having us on your podcast, because first of all, we just love talking about film in general, but we really, really loved working on Tipline together. And I love working on the Aurora films, and we definitely want to make sure that those things keep going. So even having people like yourselves that are out there promoting that work. And, once I realized your account a few weeks ago, I started looking at all of your guys' posts, and yeah, I can see the comments of other people being like, no, the original one. And to me, it was always like, but they're different. There's room for both. Like, we also love the original one, but Mary Lou, we saw Mary Lou. She's over here. She loves working on these movies, and we want to keep working all together. So it doesn't have to be one or the other in my mind. But even, people like yourselves that are out there talking about these films and giving us wonderful reviews and promoting it, it goes a long way for us to be able to come back and do more, because we really love doing these films. They're really great. And I know the network loves them too. It's like, we just need to make sure that there's an audience for them.
What do you guys have coming up? Do you have any of the holiday movies, or where we're at?
I've got one coming out next summer. I won't give you the name because it's probably going to change a few times before, so there's no point in doing that.
You said summer?
Next summer. Yeah,
so a long ways
off.
off.
It won't be until there is no air date yet, but it'll probably be the earlier part of summer next year, because we actually shot the film the tail end of the summer to play next summer, because so much of the film takes place outside, like on a beach and in kind of a resort looking town. So we really did actually need it to be nicer weather. Would have been a
They'll
little
find,
obvious.
they'll end up missing something in a slot that's coming out in the spring, and they'll go, there it goes, it's in April. Or we're actually looking, we're reading a lot of scripts right now that we're hoping to do for Hallmark as well. But I was kind of a gun for hire for a little bit there for a number of years, and that time was who did Tipline. So love to come back and for us to, you know, get a chance to do some more, but as a director. But, you know, I kind of have both worlds. Then I can hire Alan, Jessica, whatever.
She was kind enough to take some time off to come and help take care of her grandson while I was working or going back to work. So she's got that. But yeah, they've got some stuff that they're looking at producing coming up, hopefully with Hallmark, because we love our Hallmark movies. Maybe as much or more as you guys do.
Well, you get paid to it too, so you can love them
Exactly.
and get a
Like, there's
paycheck,
another
whereas I get the other side. So you probably do. Well, thank you very much. Wow, I mean, we went way longer than I had allocated,
sorry.
but
That's
lots
okay.
of good
Jessica and I seem to
information.
always be 2 hours when we do a podcast together because you
So-
get two people. That's
You're right.
why.
Well,
We're
there's
both
two
chatting
people
Kathy.
and two different movie series, so it was quite a bit to cover. So greatly appreciate it. Great information, and, you know, lots of good behind the scenes info there that was very helpful, including the infamous Halloween party of 19
I know.
or 2001 or whatever it was.
Like 2006 or something like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
2006.
Well,
So
thank you, Eric, for
Thank you so much.
reaching out to us. And anytime. If we can,
we'll
we
be
can
beating
help
our
you.
drum
we can help
for
you
more.
get other people
Thank
who,
you.
if you're reaching out and having trouble, let us know.
Like I say, it will, like, you blew my mind with Steve Basic and Kimberly Sustad, but you get Steve Basic and
I'm getting Steve.
there.
I'm saying it right now.
So tell him he
Getting
owes
Steve
me
on the
one
show.
because I just was talking to him a couple of weeks ago about a project he produced. So see, I'm always helping people. It's like, oh, Steve. So now you
funny
have to
thing-
go on.
Oh, we should wrap up. I'll talk to you off there, so we don't have to subject everyone to this. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.